CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos. She is standing by on Parliament Hill. Game day, Vassy. Good to see you again. Talk to us more about the focus of MPs as they return to work.
Yeah, it certainly feels like first day back at work, I think, here in Ottawa today. A couple of things, Marcia, that I'm focused on over the coming weeks. The first is inherently political, and that is the first time we will see a face-off in person in the House of Commons between the leader of the Conservative Party, Pierre Poilievre, and the Prime Minister, Mark Carney. I think for so long, the dynamic between then Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and Mr. Poilievre really informed the tone, the tenor, the content of the House of Commons, right? It was like a defining political characteristic. So I'm super curious to see in what way, if any, the dynamic shifts between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney. From a policy perspective, I'm also very interested to see what the government introduces outside of the budget, which I think will be the marquee piece of legislation over the next few months. They have signaled legislation on a whole slew of fronts, everything from crime to immigration to cost of living. So what the content of that legislation is and who ends up supporting the government on what, I think will also be a really interesting dynamic, just given that we are in a minority parliament.
You reminded of us of that because Carney is going to have to turn to other parties.
Yeah, very much so. And we became so used to this agreement that existed between the NDP and the Liberals, right, which kind of, in a way, felt like it gave the Liberals a de facto majority. There wasn't that drama that is inherent to most minority governments. Well, that comes back in this iteration because there is no formalized dance party for the Liberals. And in fact, the NDP and the Bloc have become, I would say, more frigid towards supporting the, any idea of supporting the Liberals for their own reasons. But now it appears that they will have to rely on the Conservatives to pass some of the big parts of their legislative agenda, which again is a brand new dynamic because in the last number of years, you never saw the Liberals and the Conservatives working together to advance major pieces of legislation really outside of COVID.
And Vassy, before you go, can you give us more thoughts around the budget? I feel like the Prime Minister is going to be asked, why November? Why is it going to take so long?
Well, Marcia, I wish I could. It is almost impossible to get any substantive answers from anyone. I'll be fair to any government and say usually they reserve the details for the actual budget, but they have done a lot of groundwork to try and get a narrative out there, right? It's going to be austere, but also full of investment. It's going to cut spending, but not cut any public service jobs. Like, quite simply, and I keep saying this, I'm kind of a broken record, I don't understand how the math adds up at this juncture. I know it's a politically very important document for them, but as far as if they will actually exercise the kind of fiscal restraint that the Prime Minister has promised, but at the same time maintain all of the program spending that they also promised they would, and increase spending on defense and on housing and whatever else they decide to invest on. I mean, it's going to be fascinating to see the way in which that happens. And as far as the date goes, it's a reflection of the complexity behind the scenes and the push and pull about how much they cut. On Friday, I was getting text messages from staffers saying, oh, even though the finance minister had promised the budget would come in October, it now looks like it might be pushed out to the first week of November. The government's House leader still said October, but that's what I'm hearing behind the scenes. It's proving to be the furthest thing from simple.
All right, Vassy, thanks so much for that. CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos, starting us off today and for the latest on Parliament's return. Be sure to watch Power Play with Vassy later at 5 o'clock Eastern right here on CTV News Channel.